Peace, everybody. Yeah, my daily video, until the end of time. But today I want to talk about power. How every aspect or instance of power in the world deals with relationships. You can't have power over a person without that person, for one, being aware of your power, and two, being in agreement of your power, right? And I draw some of this information from a book I read years ago called Blueprint for Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson, a psychologist, black psychologist, right? He says that every situation in a black America, when it comes to like white America, whatever, that we could, that we know of, we have a dominant subjective relationship. It's like a masochistic relationship. One side is subjected, the other side is dominant, right? But what legitimizes the dominant aspect of the relationship is we actually accept them as the dominant aspect. And we've been brainwashed to believe that they're essential for our survival. We need them for food, clothes, and shelter. We need them for security and protection. We need them for education. We need them for everything. And without them, we will die. So therefore, we volunteer in this power relationship. Because he say two of the most, really not just two, but I would mention three. Three forms of power. Power is to really, an energy, the ability to do work, but to get a person to do what you want them to do, to comply with you. They can either use force, and doing force, they can use coercion, the threat of force, or they could, whip you with chains and whips to force you to do the work, right? But he says that type of power is very volatile, because that causes the person who has the power inflicted upon them, for one, they're aware of your dominance. For two, they will try to get free from the pain that you inflict on them if they don't comply with the power relationship. And then they have a power where they can threaten to cut your finances. That's coercion. They could threaten to do harm to somebody. They could threaten you economically. They could threaten you. So that fear of the threat will keep you in compliance, but that still is force, right? He says the most efficient form of power is influence. Because with influence, you are not directly seen as the dominant power. You're not inflicting force and violence actively. You actually manipulated the people in a situation in which you are the sole provider of them. In some situations, with education, you could actually brainwash a people to believe that they're inferior to you. Like in Africa, like in Zimbabwe, when Robert Mugabe, president, when he kicked the white people out in the early 2000s, the British stopped paying them money. They supposed to pay them every year to keep the land, but since they didn't pay them, he said, we're gonna have to kick you out, because that was the agreement, right? They had a power relationship. But the people of Zimbabwe and also the world, they said they would not be able to eat food without white farmers. They think the only people that could actually provide products and services are white people, or the dominant society. And that's how they keep you in domination, because they need you, but you don't realize that. You need them, allegedly. You need them to get food, clothes, shelter, jobs, money, but you don't think they need you, but they really do need you. They need you for labor. They need your vote. They need you for money. They need you to be a consumer. So it's a need on both sides, but the influenced, subjective party in a relationship, they only think that they need the powered individual, the dominant individual. They don't realize the dominant individual need them also. But when I deal with the black people in America, a lot of us don't want to take responsibility for the situation that we're in, because this relationship is voluntary. We volunteer. really, I would say this: it's some semi-voluntary, because after we had freedom, after the Civil War, we had the Reconstruction period. And because black people was doing so successfully without white people, really, they forced us into citizenship by passing the 14th Amendment and saying because we was born in America, we were U.S. citizens and we're subjected to the laws. So they forced us into the citizenship and we complied with that. A lot of us was happy that we was accepted as citizens. We didn't see that as a way to exploit us, because in order to exploit people, you must have them in a contract, a relationship, a give and take relationship. And in our relationship, we give a lot more than what we receive. A lot of times we receive absolutely nothing but destruction. But because we're in that relationship, we have that label of citizenship, U.S. citizenship. A lot of us is satisfied with that. And when they tried to have us separate during Jim Crow, late 1800s to the 1960s, a lot of us was dissatisfied with that segregation, even though a lot of our resources and power was in our own hands. It was a segment of our population, the Black Greeks, the Talatotents, who wanted to be in close proximity with Caucasians. They didn't want to be separate. And they wanted a relationship, a better relationship, in which we could trade products and services. Before, we couldn't trade products and services because everything was separate, segregation. So we could only trade with each other. We wanted to work in the corporations. A lot of us wanted to move to the communities. We wanted to participate in their politics. We wanted to go to their schools. We didn't want our own schools. So what happened was we fought to be in a situation in which we're in a less powerful position. We're in a relationship now with a dominant society in which we're at the very bottom. A lot of that is by voluntary choice. Easily, if the people got together and say we no longer, we don't want this relationship, we could walk away from this relationship. A lot of us don't want to do that. That's why people still voting for Joe Biden, the segregation guy. Did all this dirt with the crime bills to the black community. He's hatred for the black community. But black people, so-called black people, still want this. It's like it's a abusive relationship that people don't want to walk away from. We know this relationship causes poverty. It causes death and destruction, murder, unemployment. It's a miserable relationship when it deals with the dominant so-called white society, right? We're not really we're not benefiting equally in this relationship. But because you're part of this relationship, you happy. It's like a woman who dates a celebrity who don't feed her, don't give her any money. She just get to be seen with him. That's all that she care about. She don't care about the mistreatment, the abuse, the suffering. And this is the black people in America. They want this relationship, even though they get nothing out of it, with doom and destruction and death and poverty. And on an individual level, a lot of us don't want to take responsibility for the fact that we have something to do with our situation. Once you claim that you have responsibility for the situation, that gives you the power to change the situation. You broke. You say, I'm broke because of such and such and such. What if the fact that you broke is because of your own self? You didn't put enough work. You didn't put enough hustle. You didn't put enough time into your craft. You didn't work hard enough. If you worked hard enough, if you did better, you might have more money. You'll be more successful if you put in the hard work. But once you blame an outside force outside of yourself, you will never do what it takes to improve the situation. So we must take responsibility for the relationships that we have, that we choose to participate in that's not beneficial. We must take responsibility for being exploited, because you have to be in agreement somehow with the person that exploited you. A person can't really stab you in the back unless they get close to you. And they can't really get close to you unless they force themselves on you. And if they force themselves on you, it'll be harder for them to deceive you. The deception has to be exposed after they got what they wanted. But if you knew they was deceptive before they got what they wanted, then they're jeopardized, not getting what they wanted, which was to rob and destroy you. But they come with a smile, they get close to you, and you participate in that relationship. but you could choose not to participate in a relationship. And sometimes we get signs that this relationship is false and fake, and you're being used, right? Or you're being set up for the kill. And we still participate in that relationship. It's like you invest in a stock, right? And you invest in this stock and it keeps falling. Every day it's falling. You think one day this stock is going to rise, and it never rises. You just lose more and more money, right? It's at one point you're going to have to make a choice to sell the stock and take your losses and keep what you got and move on to a different stock. Or you can just keep holding on to the stock until you can reach zero and lose everything. But that stock is a relationship that we participate in. Like everything we do is a participating choice. We choose to participate in. Even during slavery, when they used force to force the people into compliance, they could have still not complied. Even though it would have been brutality, they probably would have been killed. And then once they killed a person in the presence of others, that would influence the other people into compliance. But that still was a choice you had to make. A person really can't force you to do something you don't want to do. And they use pain to get you to do what you want to do. Or they can use money or a trinket, a small reward. They can use reward. It's called positive reinforcement. They reward you, and then if you don't do it, they can punish you. They can ostracize. But for some reason, in America, black people have been getting punished. But we don't really see a possibility to exist without the dominant society providing the food, clothes, and shelter. We have been brainwashed to believe that the only way to get anything and to survive in this world is through our oppressor. And when you have that situation, you would have to be unbrainwashed collectively in order to separate from this relationship. It's like Stockholm syndrome. They talk about Stockholm syndrome when the victim will sympathize with the predator and join with the predator because they've been with them so long. They developed an inseparable bond because the predator had to keep this person alive, for so long. So they depend on the small thing that the predator do, even though the predator is destroying them. That's all they have as far as rewards. So they become loyal to the predator. They don't really they don't really experience a life without the predator. So the predator is essential for you. But that relationship, but that's when a person is under captivity, when they can't really escape. They're locked in. That's when Stockholm syndrome happens, when you can't really move out. You're just stuck in there. But in America, we've been brainwashed to believe that there's nowhere to go outside of America. And inside of America, there's no way to be free from the so-called dominant society. So we have this Stockholm syndrome because we feel that even though we're being oppressed, we're still living. We still got enough to survive. We still got enough to make it to the next day, even though it's very bare minimum, but at the same time, this relationship must end. It is the only way. The only way for true happiness is to end your abusive relationships that's not beneficial, your exploitative relationships that you participate in actively. Martin Luther King, he was one of the people who wanted a relationship with the dominant society. He wanted a better relationship. He wasn't talking about separation. He was talking about integrating and having our children one day hold hands with the oppressor. He wanted better housing. He wanted more jobs, better jobs. He was cool with the oppressor as long as the oppressor slowed down the destruction and the violence, the lynching, the murder. They wasn't talking about separating from the oppressor, developing an independent nation like the Nation Islam was teaching us to separate from the beasts and have our own. But Martin Luther King, he didn't want to separate. he wanted to keep the relationship, but he just wanted more money, more access, and then they wanted, access to white women, stuff like that, access to the Caucasian institutions, access to the jobs, access to the money, better housing. He came to Chicago and had Daley Sr. build the projects, which was a devastating reality for us. That was because of Operation Breadbasket, Martin Luther King. Like, you look at the results of right now, we have to look at the truth. A lot of our ancestors made these deals and formed these abusive relationships that we're stuck in right now. And it's up to us to renegotiate. For one, you can renegotiate the relationship, but I would just say we must end this relationship, because this relationship is devastating to me and us. That's about it.